The elevator doors slid open on the 47th floor of Morrison Financial Tower, and I stepped out with my cleaning cart, just like I had every Tuesday night for the past 8 months. The marble floors gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and the city sprawled endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. But tonight felt different. Tonight, I could hear voices coming from the corner office, the one that belonged to Marcus Chen, the CEO of Morrison Financial. I wasn't supposed to be here this late. The executive floor was usually empty by 9 p.m., but my supervisor had called in sick, and someone needed to clean the conference rooms before tomorrow's board meeting. As I pushed my cart down the hallway, I heard laughter echoing from behind the mahogany door. Sharp, cruel laughter that made my stomach twist. Little did they know, the woman they were about to mock would soon be sitting across from them as an equal. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and 8 months ago, I was desperate. My marketing agency had collapsed during the pandemic, taking my life savings with it. 3 years of building my dream business, gone in a matter of weeks. The severance from my corporate job had run out. My credit cards were maxed, and my landlord was threatening eviction. When I saw the job posting for a night cleaner at Morrison Financial, I swallowed my pride and applied. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had an MBA from Northwestern, 10 years of experience in strategic marketing, and had once pitched campaigns to Fortune 500 companies. Now I was scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans in the same type of building where I used to wear tailored suits and carry leather briefcases. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and the job paid enough to keep my studio apartment and buy groceries. Most importantly, it was invisible work. None of my former colleagues would ever see me pushing a mop bucket through corporate hallways at midnight. Morrison Financial was a mid-sized investment firm that specialized in acquiring struggling businesses and turning them profitable. The building buzzed with energy during the day, suited executives rushing between meetings, phones ringing constantly, the hum of million-dollar deals being made. But at night, when the cleaning crew arrived, it became a ghost town of empty offices and forgotten coffee cups. I learned the building's rhythm quickly. The junior analysts left around 7 p.m., the senior staff by 8, and management was usually gone by 9. The security guard, Frank Patterson, was a kind man in his 60s who treated the cleaning staff with respect, a rarity in buildings like this. He'd nod hello when I signed in and sometimes shared stories about his grandchildren while I cleaned the lobby. The other cleaners were good people too. Maria Santos had been working nights for 15 years to put her 3 kids through college. James Wilson was studying nursing during the day and cleaning offices to pay for school. We formed an unlikely family, supporting each other through the exhaustion and indignity of being invisible to the people whose messes we cleaned up. But it was the daytime employees' careless conversations that caught my attention. They talked freely around us, as if we were furniture. Phones were left unlocked on desks, documents scattered carelessly, and voices raised in meetings behind thin walls. I couldn't help but absorb information about their business deals, their strategies, their problems. That's how I learned about Pinnacle Manufacturing. Pinnacle was a family-owned company that made high-end kitchen appliances. They'd been around for 40 years, but recent competition from overseas manufacturers had hurt their market share. The company was hemorrhaging money, and the elderly founder, Robert Pinnacle, was considering selling to Morrison Financial for a fraction of what it was worth just 2 years ago. I'd heard the executives discussing it in the break room, dismissing Pinnacle as a dinosaur company that was too set in its ways to adapt. They planned to gut the workforce, move production overseas, and sell off the real estate. It was a typical vulture capitalist playbook, profitable for Morrison Financial, devastating for the 300 families who depended on Pinnacle for their livelihoods. But as I emptied trash cans and overheard phone calls, I began to see something the executives missed. Pinnacle wasn't failing because their products were inferior. Their appliances were actually superior to most competitors. They were failing because their marketing was stuck in 1985. Their website looked like it was built by a teenager in the early 2000s. Their social media presence was non-existent. They were selling premium products like they were discount appliances. It was a classic case of a great company with terrible marketing, and I knew exactly how to fix it. The idea started as a whisper in the back of my mind while I vacuumed the conference room carpets. What if Pinnacle didn't need to be acquired and destroyed? What if they just needed someone who understood modern marketing? Someone who could rebrand them, modernize their approach, and tap into the growing market of consumers who valued American-made high-quality products? I tried to push the thought away. I was a cleaner now, not a marketing consultant. I had no business thinking about corporate turnarounds while scrubbing bathroom floors. But the idea wouldn't leave me alone. During my lunch breaks, I started researching Pinnacle Manufacturing on my phone. Their product line was impressive: chef-quality stand mixers, professional-grade food processors, commercial-style refrigerators that belonged in high-end kitchens. The craftsmanship was evident even in their poorly lit product photos. Customer reviews were overwhelmingly positive, with people praising the durability and performance of appliances they'd owned for decades. The problem was visibility. Pinnacle was invisible to the modern consumer. Food bloggers were using KitchenAid mixers in their Instagram posts, not knowing that Pinnacle made superior products. Celebrity chefs were endorsing imported brands, while American-made alternatives sat unknown in small appliance stores. The company had a marketing budget that wouldn't cover a decent Facebook ad campaign. I found myself taking notes during my cleaning shifts, jotting down observations about Morrison Financial's acquisition strategy and Pinnacle's untapped potential. I researched the premium appliance market, analyzed competitor strategies, and drafted a preliminary marketing plan on napkins during my dinner breaks. It was insane. I was a night cleaner fantasizing about saving a company I'd never seen, using knowledge I'd gained from eavesdropping on conversations while emptying trash cans. But the more I researched, the more convinced I became that Pinnacle could be turned around with the right approach. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later, when I overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. Marcus Chen was working late, which was unusual. I was cleaning the offices on the executive floor when I heard his voice carrying through his partially open door. He was frustrated, speaking in sharp tones to someone about a problem with the Pinnacle deal. I slowed my movements, straining to hear without appearing to eavesdrop. Chen was pacing behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, clearly agitated. "The old man is getting cold feet," he said. "Robert Pinnacle is having second thoughts about selling. His daughter is in his ear telling him the company just needs better marketing. It's ridiculous. They're bleeding money, but she thinks a few Instagram posts are going to save them." My heart raced. Pinnacle's daughter understood what Morrison Financial's executives couldn't see. "No, we can't wait," Chen continued. "If Pinnacle doesn't sign by the end of the month, we'll lose the Henderson deal too. That's $15 million in projected revenue down the drain." I pushed my cart to the next office, mind spinning. Morrison Financial needed Pinnacle to sign quickly, which meant they were vulnerable. If someone could present Robert Pinnacle with a viable alternative, a way to save his company without selling to vultures, it could change everything. That night, I went home to my tiny studio apartment and did something crazy. I opened my laptop and started writing a comprehensive business proposal for Pinnacle Manufacturing. I worked until dawn, fueled by coffee and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, I could make a difference. The proposal was everything I would have presented to a client during my agency days, but refined by months of inadvertently studying Morrison Financial's methods. I outlined a complete rebranding strategy, digital marketing plan, influencer partnerships, and direct-to-consumer sales approach. I showed how Pinnacle could pivot from a dying wholesale business to a thriving premium brand that commanded higher prices and customer loyalty. But I didn't just write a marketing plan. I researched Robert Pinnacle's background, his company's history, and his family's connection to American manufacturing. I crafted a narrative that honored their legacy while positioning them for modern success. I identified specific market opportunities, competitor weaknesses, and revenue projections that would make any business owner take notice. The finished proposal was 47 pages of detailed strategy, market analysis, and implementation timelines. It was the best work I'd ever produced, born from desperation and fueled by the knowledge that hundreds of jobs hung in the balance. Now I just had to figure out how to get it into Robert Pinnacle's hands without revealing that I'd learned about his situation by eavesdropping while cleaning offices. The answer came from an unexpected source. During my research, I discovered that Robert Pinnacle's daughter, Sarah, was a graduate of Northwestern's business school, the same program where I'd earned my MBA. We'd never met, but we had professors in common and moved in similar professional circles. I crafted a careful email introducing myself as a fellow Northwestern alum who'd heard about Pinnacle Manufacturing through industry contacts. I mentioned my background in marketing and my interest in American manufacturing, then asked if she'd be willing to review a proposal I'd developed for companies in similar situations. It was a long shot, but Sarah Pinnacle responded within 2 days. She was intrigued by my credentials and desperate enough to consider any alternatives to selling to Morrison Financial. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago the following Saturday. I told my supervisor I was sick and took my first day off in 8 months. For the first time since starting at Morrison Financial, I put on a business suit, carried a leather portfolio, and walked into a meeting as Elena Rodriguez, the marketing consultant, not Elena Rodriguez, the night cleaner. Sarah Pinnacle was a sharp woman in her early 30s, with her father's determined eyes and an MBA from Kellogg. She'd been fighting to save the family business for 2 years, watching helplessly as Morrison Financial circled like sharks. When I presented my proposal, her reaction was everything I'd hoped for. "This is exactly what we need," she said, flipping through the pages with growing excitement. "You understand our industry better than the consultants we've paid thousands of dollars to. How did you develop such detailed insights into our specific challenges?" I gave her a carefully crafted answer about industry research and competitive analysis, which was technically true. She didn't need to know that my insights came from 8 months of emptying trash cans and overhearing phone calls. "I want my father to see this," Sarah continued. "Can you present it to him next week? I should warn you, he's skeptical of consultants, but this proposal might change his mind." That's how I found myself, driving to Pinnacle Manufacturing's headquarters in suburban Milwaukee, my heart pounding as I prepared to pitch the most important presentation of my life to a man whose company I'd been inadvertently studying for months. Robert Pinnacle was exactly what I'd expected, a tough, weathered man in his 70s who'd built his company with his own hands. His office was filled with photos of employees, manufacturing awards, and prototypes of appliances that had never made it to market. He listened to my presentation with the intense focus of someone who'd spent decades making difficult decisions. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me carefully. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said finally, "this is the first proposal I've seen that actually understands what we do here. These other consultants come in talking about synergies and optimization, but you're talking about honoring our craftsmanship while reaching new customers. That tells me you get it." He paused, looking out the window at the factory floor where his employees were assembling stand mixers that would last for decades. "The question is, can you actually execute this plan? Because if you can't, we're back to considering Morrison Financial's offer, and 300 people lose their jobs." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Pinnacle, I've spent my entire career helping companies find their voice in crowded markets. I know I can make this work, but I need you to trust me with a 6-month trial period. If I don't deliver measurable results in that time, you can still consider other options." What I didn't tell him was that I was still working as a night cleaner at Morrison Financial, gathering intelligence on their acquisition timeline while secretly working to save the company they wanted to destroy. Robert Pinnacle extended his hand. "You've got yourself a deal, Ms. Rodriguez. When can you start?" Living a double life is exhausting. By day, I was Elena Rodriguez, marketing consultant and business savior. By night, I was just another invisible cleaner pushing a cart through Morrison Financial's gleaming hallways. The contrast was jarring, but it gave me an advantage nobody could have predicted. My first week working with Pinnacle Manufacturing was a whirlwind of strategy sessions, brand development meetings, and late-night brainstorming. Sarah had set up a small office for me in their Milwaukee headquarters, complete with a desk overlooking the factory floor. Watching skilled craftsmen assemble kitchen appliances with the same care their fathers and grandfathers had used was inspiring. These weren't just products, they were family legacies built to last generations. But every Tuesday and Thursday night, I still reported to Morrison Financial, with my cleaning supplies and rubber gloves. Frank the security guard would nod his familiar greeting, Maria would update me on her daughter's college applications, and James would share his latest nursing school exam results. They had no idea their colleague was simultaneously working to dismantle a multi-million-dollar acquisition their employers desperately needed. The intelligence I gathered during those cleaning shifts became invaluable. Marcus Chen's frustration with the Pinnacle delay was escalating. I overheard him scheduling emergency meetings with his acquisition team, pushing for more aggressive tactics to pressure Robert Pinnacle into signing. They were considering leveraging Pinnacle's outstanding loans, threatening to call in debts early, and spreading rumors about the company's financial instability to potential customers. It was corporate warfare, and I was the spy in their midst, mopping floors while memorizing their battle plans. Meanwhile, my work with Pinnacle was gaining momentum. The first phase of our marketing strategy launched with a complete website overhaul. Instead of grainy product photos in corporate speak, we created a visual story that celebrated American craftsmanship. Professional photographers captured the manufacturing process, highlighting the human hands that shaped each appliance. We interviewed longtime employees about their pride in building products that customers treasured for decades. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Orders that had been trickling in started flowing steadily. Food bloggers discovered Pinnacle through targeted social media campaigns, sharing videos of themselves using stand mixers that outperformed their imported competitors. Home cooking enthusiasts embraced the brand's authenticity, posting photos of family recipes made with appliances their grandmothers would have envied. But success brought new challenges. Robert Pinnacle was thrilled with the initial results, but he was also suspicious about how quickly I'd understood their market position. During our third week of collaboration, he cornered me after a strategy meeting. "Elena, I've been in this business for 40 years, he said, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. I've worked with consultants who spent months learning what you seem to know immediately. How did you develop such detailed insights into our competition and market challenges?" My mouth went dry. I'd prepared for this question, but lying to a man who trusted me with his life's work felt wrong. I chose my words carefully. "Mr. Pinnacle, I've made it my business to study companies like yours. I research market trends, competitive strategies, and industry challenges constantly. When I heard about Pinnacle through Northwestern Connections, I'd already been following the premium appliance market closely. It wasn't entirely false, but it wasn't the whole truth either." He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Just remember, this company isn't just a business to me. It's my family's legacy and the livelihood of everyone who works here. I need to know that the people I trust understand what's at stake." His words hit harder than he could have known. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, I cleaned the offices of people who saw Pinnacle Manufacturing as nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. They discussed the company's employees like they were disposable assets, calculating severance costs and unemployment statistics with cold efficiency. The contrast between Robert Pinnacle's paternal care for his workers and Morrison Financial's ruthless calculations was stark. As Pinnacle's marketing success continued, Morrison Financial's pressure intensified. Chen began scheduling meetings at odd hours, forcing his team to work nights and weekends to develop new acquisition strategies. This meant more executives staying late, more conversations for me to overhear, and more valuable intelligence to gather. During one particularly revealing cleaning shift, I discovered that Morrison Financial was planning a hostile takeover attempt. They'd been quietly buying up Pinnacle's outstanding debt from various lenders, positioning themselves to force a sale even if Robert Pinnacle refused their direct offers. The timeline was aggressive. They wanted to control enough debt to trigger default clauses within 60 days. I found the documents in Chen's trash can, crumpled but readable. Financial projections, legal strategies, and communication plans laid out their entire approach. They intended to manufacture a financial crisis that would leave Pinnacle no choice but to accept their acquisition offer at a severely reduced price. The irony was bitter. Here I was, literally cleaning up, after the people plotting to destroy the company I was working to save. But their carelessness had just given me the intelligence I needed to protect Pinnacle from their corporate predators. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with Robert and Sarah Pinnacle. I couldn't reveal how I'd obtained the information, so I framed it as industry intelligence from my professional network. "We need to accelerate our timeline," I told them urgently. "There are rumors that Morrison Financial isn't just waiting for you to accept their offer. They're actively working to force your hand. We need to strengthen your financial position before they can leverage your debt against you." Sarah looked confused, but Robert's face darkened with understanding. He'd been in business long enough to recognize predatory tactics. "What do you recommend?" he asked. "We need to demonstrate strong revenue growth immediately. The marketing campaigns are working, but we need to amplify them. More importantly, we need to diversify your customer base and secure some major contracts that will improve your cash flow position." Over the next 2 weeks, we launched an aggressive expansion strategy. I leveraged every contact from my previous marketing career, reaching out to restaurant chains, boutique hotels, and culinary schools. The key was positioning Pinnacle not just as appliance manufacturers, but as partners in creating exceptional culinary experiences. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the food bloggers we'd partnered with was planning to open a high-end cooking school in Chicago. She wanted to equip her kitchen with appliances that would inspire her students and reflect her commitment to quality. After touring Pinnacle's factory and meeting the craftsmen who would build her equipment, she placed an order worth more than $200,000. More importantly, she introduced us to her network of celebrity chefs and culinary influencers. Within a month, Pinnacle appliances were appearing in cooking shows, Instagram posts, and YouTube videos. The brand that Morrison Financial had dismissed as obsolete was suddenly trending among the people who shaped America's cooking culture. but success came with a price. The more time I spent in Milwaukee, the harder it became to maintain my cleaning schedule in Chicago. I started making excuses, calling in sick more frequently, and rearranging my Morrison Financial shifts. Maria and James noticed my absences, expressing concern about my health and job security. "Elena, you've been out a lot lately," Maria said during one of our rare overlapping shifts. "Frank asked me if everything was okay with you. You don't want to lose this job. It took me 15 years to work up to cleaning the executive floors." Her concern was genuine, and it made my deception even more painful. These people had become my friends, supporting me through the most difficult period of my life. Now I was lying to them about why I was disappearing, unable to explain that I was secretly working to undermine their employer's business plans. The situation became even more complicated when Morrison Financial's acquisition team decided to visit Pinnacle Manufacturing personally. Chen had grown impatient with Robert Pinnacle's delays and wanted to pressure him face to face. They scheduled a meeting for the following Thursday, the same day I was supposed to clean their offices. I found myself in an impossible position. If I attended the meeting at Pinnacle as Elena Rodriguez, the consultant, I risked being recognized by Morrison Financial executives who might have seen me cleaning their building. But if I skipped the meeting, I'd miss crucial negotiations that could determine Pinnacle's fate. The solution came from Sarah Pinnacle, who suggested I participate in the meeting via video conference from our Chicago office. It was a reasonable request. Many consultants worked remotely, and my presence wouldn't seem unusual. What she didn't know was that her suggestion allowed me to be in two places at once, literally watching Morrison Financial's executives prepare for their meeting while simultaneously advising their target on how to resist their tactics. Thursday evening arrived with the tension of an approaching storm. I positioned myself in a small conference room at Pinnacle's Chicago office, laptop open and ready for the video call. Through the window, I could see Morrison Financial Tower in the distance, its lights glowing against the darkening sky. In a few hours, I'd be inside that building with my cleaning cart, but for now, I was Elena Rodriguez, the consultant, preparing to help Robert Pinnacle defend his company. The meeting began promptly at 7 p.m. Marcus Chen appeared on screen flanked by two associates, their expressions serious and professional. Robert and Sarah Pinnacle sat across from me in Milwaukee while I watched from Chicago, my heart pounding as I prepared to go head-to-head with the executives whose offices I'd be cleaning in just a few hours. Chen's opening move was predictable, a mixture of veiled threats and false urgency designed to pressure Robert into accepting their original offer. He spoke about market conditions, competitive pressures, and the risks of delaying a decision. It was corporate intimidation disguised as friendly advice. But I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. Every conversation I'd overheard while emptying trash cans, every document I'd glimpsed while cleaning conference rooms, every late-night strategy session I'd witnessed had prepared me for this confrontation. When Chen finished his presentation, I smiled at the camera and began to dismantle his arguments one by one. "Mr. Chen," I began, my voice steady despite the surreal nature of the situation. "I appreciate your concern for Pinnacle Manufacturing's future, but I think you're operating on outdated information." Chen's eyebrows raised slightly. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by consultants representing companies he was trying to acquire. Through the video conference screen, I could see him exchange glances with his associates. "I'm sorry, Ms. Rodriguez." Elena Rodriguez, strategic marketing consultant. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth while knowing that in 3 hours, I'd be pushing a mop bucket past his office door. "Ms. Rodriguez, while I'm sure your marketing efforts are admirable, you need to understand the realities of Pinnacle's financial situation. They're facing increasing competition, rising manufacturing costs, and declining market share. Our acquisition offer represents their best opportunity for stability." I leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. "Actually, Mr. Chen, Pinnacle's market share has increased by 12% in the last 6 weeks. Their revenue is up 37%, and they've secured contracts worth over $1.2 million in new business. The declining market narrative you're presenting doesn't match current reality." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert Pinnacle's face lit up with pride, while Sarah gripped the edge of the conference table. On screen, Marcus Chen's composed expression cracked slightly. "Those numbers seem optimistic," Chen said carefully. "Market conditions don't change that quickly." "They do when you're addressing fundamental marketing deficiencies," I replied. Pinnacle wasn't failing because their products were inferior. They were failing because consumers didn't know they existed. We've corrected that problem. What followed was the most intense business negotiation of my life. Chen and his team threw everything they had at us. Market analysis, competitive threats, financial projections designed to intimidate. They painted pictures of economic downturns, supply chain disruptions, and industry consolidation that would supposedly crush small manufacturers like Pinnacle. But I had an advantage they couldn't have imagined. For 8 months, I'd been listening to their private conversations, reading their discarded documents, and understanding their true motivations. I knew their acquisition targets, their profit margins, and their desperation to close the Pinnacle deal before the end of the quarter. Your concerns about market volatility are interesting, I said during one of Chen's lengthy warnings about economic uncertainty. But Morrison Financial's recent acquisitions in the appliance sector have actually struggled to maintain profitability after restructuring. DataPoint Kitchen Solutions lost 40% of its market share after you moved production overseas. Apex Appliances saw a 60% increase in customer complaints following your quality control modifications. Chen's face tightened. This information wasn't public knowledge. I'd pieced it together from overheard phone calls and glimpses of internal reports. His associates shifted uncomfortably as I continued. The pattern suggests that Morrison Financial's approach to appliance manufacturing acquisitions may not align with Pinnacle's long-term success. Robert and Sarah aren't just protecting their company, they're protecting their employees and their customers from a track record that speaks for itself. The meeting stretched on for 2 hours, with Chen growing increasingly frustrated as his intimidation tactics failed to work. Every threat was countered with data, every pressure point deflected with evidence of Pinnacle's improving position. Finally, Chen made a tactical error. Ms. Rodriguez, I think you're being naive about the challenges facing small manufacturers. Perhaps you should stick to marketing campaigns and leave the financial analysis to people who understand corporate acquisitions. It was a condescending dismissal designed to undermine my credibility, but it gave me the opening I needed. Mr. Chen, I understand corporate acquisitions better than you might think. I also understand that Morrison Financial needs to close this deal by month's end to maintain your projected quarterly earnings. The Henderson Group acquisition you're pursuing depends on demonstrating successful integration of companies like Pinnacle. Without this deal, you're looking at a significant shortfall in revenue projections. The color drained from Chen's face. This was highly confidential information that only Morrison Financial's senior leadership should have known. I'd gambled everything on one overheard phone conversation, and Chen's reaction confirmed I'd hit the target. How could you possibly know about? Chen began, then stopped himself. Industry networks are smaller than you think, I said smoothly. When you're working to save a company, you develop sources of information that might surprise you. The meeting ended with Chen and his team retreating to quote, reassess their position. Robert Pinnacle was ecstatic, Sarah was amazed, and I was terrified. I'd just used insider information obtained through corporate espionage to defeat a multi-million-dollar acquisition attempt. The victory felt hollow, knowing how I'd achieved it. But my night wasn't over. At 11 p.m., I drove from Pinnacle's Chicago office to Morrison Financial Tower, changed into my cleaning uniform in the parking garage, and took the service elevator to the 47th floor. Frank greeted me with his usual nod, completely unaware that the woman signing in with the cleaning crew had just cost his employers millions of dollars. The executive floor was buzzing with activity, unusual for so late in the evening. Chen's office light was on, and I could hear animated conversations coming from the conference room. My heart raced as I pushed my cart down the hallway, wondering if they suspected anything about the source of my information. As I cleaned the offices adjacent to the conference room, fragments of conversation drifted through the walls. Chen was furious, demanding to know how Pinnacle's consultant had obtained confidential information about Morrison Financial's business operations. His associates were scrambling to identify potential leaks, reviewing employee access logs and communication records. Someone is feeding them inside intelligence, Chen said, his voice tight with anger. That woman knew details about our Henderson negotiations that only 5 people in this company should know. We need to find the source and eliminate it. I forced myself to continue cleaning, emptying trash cans and wiping down surfaces while my mind raced. They were hunting for a mole in their organization, never suspecting that their leak was the invisible woman cleaning their offices while they plotted and schemed. The irony was almost overwhelming. Here I was, literally cleaning up their messes while they searched for the person who'd been cleaning up their messes metaphorically. Every crumpled document I'd rescued from waste baskets, every conversation I'd overheard while vacuuming, every careless phone call made in my presence had contributed to Pinnacle's victory. But victory came with consequences. Over the next week, Morrison Financial launched an investigation into potential security breaches. They changed computer passwords, implemented new document handling procedures, and began conducting sensitive meetings in soundproof conference rooms. My intelligence gathering became much more difficult, just when I needed it most. Meanwhile, Pinnacle's success continued to accelerate. The confrontation with Morrison Financial had energized Robert Pinnacle, who threw himself into expanding the company with renewed vigor. We launched new product lines, established partnerships with culinary schools, and began exploring international markets. The company that had been hemorrhaging money 6 months earlier was now turning away customers due to production capacity constraints. But success brought new challenges. As Pinnacle grew, my role as a consultant became more demanding. Sarah wanted me to relocate to Milwaukee permanently, manage a growing marketing team, and take on expanded responsibilities that would require full-time commitment. The offer was everything I'd dreamed of during those desperate months when my own business collapsed. A chance to rebuild my career while making a meaningful difference. The problem was that I couldn't accept without abandoning my intelligence gathering at Morrison Financial. Chen's team was regrouping, developing new strategies to pressure Pinnacle, and I was still the only person who could provide advance warning of their tactics. The decision was made for me during a particularly eventful Thursday night shift. I was cleaning Chen's office when I discovered documents that made my blood run cold. Morrison Financial hadn't given up on acquiring Pinnacle. They decided to destroy it instead. The papers outlined a comprehensive sabotage campaign designed to undermine Pinnacle's reputation and financial stability. They planned to launch anonymous complaints with regulatory agencies, spread rumors about product defects, and pressure suppliers to delay shipments. If they couldn't buy Pinnacle, they would systematically destroy the company's ability to compete. It was corporate warfare at its most vicious, and it was scheduled to begin the following Monday. I photographed the documents with my phone, my hands shaking as I realized the implications. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about survival. Morrison Financial was planning to use every dirty trick in their arsenal to eliminate a competitor they couldn't control. But as I tucked the documents back into Chen's desk drawer, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone was coming back to the office, and I was trapped in the middle of corporate espionage with evidence that could destroy both companies. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by voices I recognized. Chen was returning with his legal team, probably to retrieve the same documents I'd just been photographing. In 30 seconds, they would walk through the door and find me standing behind Chen's desk with my phone in my hand. I had nowhere to run and no way to explain what I was doing. After months of living a double life, my carefully constructed deception was about to collapse in the most dramatic way possible. The door handle turned, and Marcus Chen stepped into his office to find his night cleaner standing behind his desk, holding a phone and looking guilty as hell. "What exactly are you doing?" Chen asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I looked at the CEO whose acquisition plans I'd been systematically destroying, whose private conversations I'd been secretly recording, whose corporate espionage I'd just discovered. There was no explanation that would make sense to him, no story that would justify my position, so I told him the truth. "Mr. Chen," I said, setting my phone on his desk and straightening to my full height. "My name is Elena Rodriguez. I'm a marketing consultant, and for the past 8 months, I've been working to save Pinnacle Manufacturing from your acquisition attempts while cleaning your offices at night." The silence that followed was deafening. Chen's associates exchanged bewildered glances, unsure whether they'd stumbled into a joke or a confession. Chen himself stood frozen, processing information that challenged everything he thought he knew about corporate security. "You're telling me," Chen said slowly, "that the consultant who humiliated me in that video conference last week is our night cleaner? That's correct. And you've been using information gathered while cleaning our offices to advise Pinnacle on how to resist our acquisition? Also correct." Chen's face cycled through several emotions: surprise, anger, grudging respect, and something that might have been amusement. His legal team looked ready to call the police, but Chen held up a hand to stop them. "Elena Rodriguez," he said, shaking his head in disbelief, "you might be the most audacious corporate spy I've ever encountered. What you've done is probably illegal, definitely unethical, and absolutely brilliant." I hadn't expected admiration from the man I'd been systematically undermining for months. "Mr. Chen, I discovered your plans to sabotage Pinnacle Manufacturing. That goes beyond corporate acquisition into criminal territory." Chen's expression hardened. "Those documents are confidential corporate strategy. You had no right to access them. And you have no right to destroy a company because you can't buy it," I shot back. Pinnacle Manufacturing employs 300 people who depend on their jobs to feed their families. Your acquisition would eliminate most of those positions to maximize profit margins. Your sabotage campaign would destroy all of them. The room fell silent as Chen considered my words. His associate shifted uncomfortably, aware that the conversation had moved beyond corporate espionage into moral territory they weren't prepared to navigate. Finally, Chen laughed, a sound of genuine amusement mixed with respect. Ms. Rodriguez, in 20 years of corporate acquisitions, I've never encountered anyone quite like you. You've cost me millions of dollars, humiliated my team, and somehow made me respect your methods at the same time. He walked around his desk and sat down, gesturing for me to take a chair across from him. Tell me something. What do you really want out of this situation? YouTube script. Part 4, The Unexpected Alliance. I stared at Marcus Chen across his mahogany desk, trying to process the surreal turn this conversation had taken. The man whose business plans I'd been systematically sabotaging for months was asking what I wanted, as if we were negotiating a partnership instead of discussing corporate espionage. What I want, I said carefully, is for Pinnacle Manufacturing to survive and thrive without being destroyed by predatory acquisition tactics. Those 300 employees deserve better than being treated as disposable assets in a profit optimization scheme. Chen leaned back in his chair, studying me with the intensity of someone reassessing everything they thought they knew about a situation. His legal team stood frozen by the door, clearly uncertain whether they should be calling security or taking notes. You know, Chen said finally, in all my years of acquisitions, I've never had a targets consultant infiltrate my organization to gather intelligence. It's audacious, illegal, and frankly, exactly the kind of creative thinking that makes successful businesses. I blinked, unsure whether I'd heard him correctly. Are you complimenting my corporate espionage? I'm recognizing talent when I see it, Chen replied. Tell me something, Elena. What made you think you could pull this off? Most people wouldn't have the nerve to maintain a double identity for 8 months, let alone use it to outmaneuver a team of experienced acquisition specialists. The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on survival and protecting Pinnacle that I hadn't really considered the audacity of what I'd attempted. Desperation, I answered honestly. When my marketing agency collapsed, I lost everything. This cleaning job was supposed to be temporary, just a way to pay rent while I figured out my next move. But then I started hearing about Pinnacle, and I realized I might be the only person in a position to help them. And you decided that helping them was worth risking your freedom? Chen asked. Because what you've done could be prosecuted as corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and fraud. His words sent a chill down my spine, but I met his gaze steadily. Yes, it was worth it, because sometimes doing the right thing requires taking risks that seem impossible. Chen was quiet for a long moment, then turned to his legal team. Gentlemen, could you give Ms. Rodriguez and me a few minutes to speak privately? The lawyers exchanged concerned glances. Sir, we strongly advise against discussing this matter without legal representation present. The liability issues alone are my concern, not yours, Chen interrupted. Please wait outside. Once we were alone, Chen's entire demeanor shifted. The corporate shark facade dropped, revealing something more human underneath. Elena, can I speak to you off the record for a moment? I nodded, though I wasn't sure what off the record meant when I'd already confessed to months of corporate espionage. 20 years ago, I was a lot like you, Chen said. Young, idealistic, convinced that business could be a force for good in the world. I started Morrison Financial because I wanted to save struggling companies, not destroy them. The idea was to identify undervalued businesses, provide them with capital and expertise, and help them reach their potential. He paused, looking out the window at the city lights below. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that mission. The pressure to deliver quarterly returns, to satisfy investors, to compete with larger firms. It changed how I operated. Companies like Pinnacle stopped being opportunities to create value and became assets to be optimized. I sat quietly, unsure where this confession was leading. Your infiltration of my company has been the most expensive wake-up call of my career, Chen continued. But it's also been the most valuable. You've reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. Mr. Chen, I'm not sure I understand where you're going with this. He turned back to face me, and I saw something unexpected in his eyes. Respect, and perhaps even admiration. I'm going with this, Elena. I want to offer you a job. I stared at him, convinced I'd misheard. You want to offer me a job? I just confessed to corporate espionage against your company. You confessed to being the most effective competitive intelligence operative I've ever encountered, Chen corrected. You infiltrated my organization, gathered actionable intelligence, and used it to outmaneuver a team of experienced professionals. Those are exactly the skills I need on my side. But what about Pinnacle? What about the sabotage campaign? Chen waved dismissively. The sabotage campaign is canceled as of tonight. In fact, I'm withdrawing Morrison Financial's acquisition offer entirely. I felt like the world had tilted sideways. You're withdrawing the offer. Elena, you've proven that Pinnacle Manufacturing is viable with the right strategy. Robert Pinnacle was right to resist our acquisition. His company doesn't need to be saved, it needs to be supported. There's a difference, and you've shown me what that looks like. Chen stood and walked to his window, hands clasped behind his back. What I'm proposing is a complete restructuring of how Morrison Financial approaches acquisitions. Instead of buying companies to strip and optimize them, we identify struggling businesses and provide them with the resources they need to succeed independently. Like a consulting firm? Like a partnership firm. We provide capital, expertise, and strategic guidance, but the companies remain autonomous. They keep their employees, their culture, and their identity. We succeed when they succeed, not when we consume them. The proposal was so unexpected that I struggled to process it. And you want me to lead this initiative? I want you to design it, Chen said. You've demonstrated something I haven't seen in years. The ability to understand a business from the inside out, identify its true potential, and develop strategies that honor its strengths while addressing its weaknesses. That's exactly what this new approach would require. I thought about Maria, still cleaning offices to put her kids through college. I thought about James, balancing nursing school with night shifts. I thought about Frank, greeting everyone with kindness, despite being invisible to most of the building's occupants. What about the cleaning staff? I asked. The people who work nights in this building? Chen looked confused. What about them? They're invisible to most of your employees, but they see and hear everything. Maria has been working here for 15 years, putting 3 children through college. James is studying to become a nurse while cleaning your offices. Frank has grandchildren he talks about with pride, but most people walk past him like he doesn't exist. I'm not sure I see the relevance to our business discussion. The relevance is that businesses are made up of people, not just profit margins, I said firmly. If Morrison Financial is going to change its approach to acquisitions, it needs to start by changing how it treats the people who are already here. You can't value other companies' employees while ignoring your own. Chen considered this for a moment. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that any partnership with Morrison Financial requires a fundamental shift in corporate culture. Better wages for service employees, education benefits, recognition programs. If you're going to preach about preserving jobs and supporting workers, you need to practice it in your own building. And if I agree to these conditions? I took a deep breath, hardly believing what I was about to say. Then I'll consider your offer. But I have one more condition. Which is? Pinnacle Manufacturing becomes the first company in your new partnership program. No acquisition, no control, just support. Robert Pinnacle retains full ownership, and Morrison Financial provides capital and expertise to help them expand into new markets. Chen extended his hand across the desk. Ms. Rodriguez, you have yourself a deal. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal negotiations, corporate restructuring, and personal revelations. Morrison Financial announced the launch of their Strategic Partnership Initiative, positioning themselves as advisors rather than acquirers. The business press was skeptical, but early results were promising. Pinnacle Manufacturing became the flagship example of the new approach. With Morrison Financial's capital backing and my marketing expertise, Robert Pinnacle expanded production capacity, developed new product lines, and established international distribution channels. The company that had been weeks away from forced acquisition was now growing faster than they could hire employees. My role evolved beyond anything I could have imagined. As Director of Strategic Partnerships for Morrison Financial, I traveled the country identifying businesses that could benefit from support rather than acquisition. Each company presented unique challenges, but the basic approach remained the same. Understand their strengths, address their weaknesses, and provide resources that amplified their potential rather than consuming their identity. But the most satisfying change was happening inside Morrison Financial itself. The service employees who had been invisible for years suddenly found themselves valued and recognized. Maria was promoted to lead custodial supervisor with a significant raise and education benefits for her children. James received a scholarship for nursing school along with a flexible schedule that accommodated his studies. Frank was honored at the company's annual meeting for his 15 years of dedicated service. The transformation wasn't just cosmetic, it was cultural. When executives began treating service employees with respect and recognition, it changed how they thought about all employees, including those at partner companies. You can't simultaneously ignore the janitor cleaning your office and claim to value the workers at businesses you're trying to help. 6 months after that night in Chen's office, I found myself standing in the same conference room where I'd first confronted Morrison Financial via video call. But this time, I was presenting Pinnacle Manufacturing's success story to a room full of potential partner companies. Robert Pinnacle sat in the front row, beaming with pride as I outlined his company's transformation. Revenues had increased by 340%, employment had grown from 300 to 480 workers, and customer satisfaction scores were at all-time highs. The company that Morrison Financial had tried to acquire for $12 million was now valued at over $45 million. The key to successful business partnerships, I told the assembled CEOs, isn't finding companies to control, it's finding companies to support. When you honor what makes a business unique while providing resources to amplify their strengths, everyone benefits. Sarah Pinnacle raised her hand from the audience. Elena, can you talk about how this partnership model addresses the human element of business transformation? I smiled, thinking about all the people whose lives had been changed by this new approach. Business isn't just about numbers on spreadsheets. It's about people building something meaningful together. When we started working with Pinnacle, we weren't just saving a company, we were preserving livelihoods, honoring craftsmanship, and respecting the dignity of work itself. After the presentation, Marcus Chen approached me with a satisfied expression. Elena, I have to ask, do you ever regret not taking that cleaning job more seriously? You could have been the most overeducated janitor in corporate history. I laughed, but the question made me thoughtful. Actually, Marcus, that cleaning job was the most educational experience of my career. It taught me that every person in an organization has value, that information flows in unexpected directions, and that sometimes the most powerful position is the one that seems powerless. And now I get to use everything I learned from both sides of the desk to help businesses succeed without sacrificing their humanity. Chen nodded approvingly. You know, when I first offered you this job, I thought I was hiring a brilliant consultant who happened to be good at corporate espionage. I didn't realize I was hiring someone who would fundamentally change how I think about business. That's what happens when you take people seriously instead of taking them for granted, I replied. Everyone has something valuable to contribute, but only if you're willing to listen. As the evening concluded and guests began to leave, I found myself thinking about the journey that had brought me to this moment. A year ago, I was a failed entrepreneur, scrubbing toilets to pay rent. Tonight, I was the architect of a business model that was reshaping how companies thought about partnerships and people. But the most important transformation hadn't happened in boardrooms or conference centers. It had happened in the quiet moments when powerful people learned to see and value the individuals who had always been there, working in the shadows, making everything possible. Robert Pinnacle approached me as I was gathering my presentation materials. Elena, I have something for you. He handed me a small wooden box engraved with the Pinnacle Manufacturing logo. Inside was a pristine kitchen timer, crafted with the same attention to detail as their premium appliances. This timer was made by our craftsmen using the same techniques my father taught me 40 years ago, Robert explained. It's not fancy or high-tech, but it will keep perfect time for decades. I wanted you to have it as a reminder that the best things in business, like the best things in life, are built to last. I held the timer carefully, feeling its solid weight and smooth finish. Thank you, Robert. This means more to me than you know. You saved our company, Elena. But more than that, you saved our legacy. 300 families still have jobs because you cared enough to fight for something you believed in. As I drove home that night, Robert's timer sitting on my passenger seat, I reflected on the unexpected turns my life had taken. The woman who had once been invisible, pushing a cleaning cart through corporate hallways, had become someone whose voice carried weight in boardrooms, and whose decisions affected thousands of lives. But the real victory wasn't personal success. It was proving that business could be a force for good when conducted with integrity, respect, and genuine concern for human dignity. Companies didn't have to choose between profitability and humanity. They could honor both by recognizing that their greatest assets weren't financial. They were the people who showed up every day, in every role, to build something meaningful together. The next morning, I arrived at Morrison Financial Tower for the first time through the front entrance, wearing a business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Frank greeted me with the same warm smile he'd given me for months, but now there was recognition in his eyes. "Good morning, Ms. Rodriguez," he said. "How's the new job treating you?" "It's treating me well, Frank. How are your grandchildren?" His face lit up with pride. "Emma just started kindergarten, and Michael is learning to play baseball. Thank you for asking." As I waited for the elevator, I watched the morning rush of executives, analysts, and support staff beginning another day. Some were heading to meetings that would reshape companies, others to maintenance tasks that kept the building running smoothly. All of them were essential to the organization's success, whether they realized it or not. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the 47th floor. As we rose through the building, I thought about all the conversations happening in offices and break rooms, all the decisions being made that would affect real people's lives, all the opportunities to choose between profit and principle. When the doors opened on the executive floor, I walked confidently down the hallway I'd once navigated with a cleaning cart, past offices I'd once cleaned while invisible to their occupants. My new office overlooked the city, with a view that stretched to the horizon. But the real view, the one that mattered most, was the perspective I'd gained from seeing business from every angle, understanding that true success came not from consuming companies, but from building them up, not from exploiting workers, but from empowering them, and not from being invisible, but from making everyone visible. As I settled into my chair and opened my laptop to begin another day of work, I smiled at the irony. The woman they had once dismissed as just a cleaner was now helping to clean up an entire industry, one partnership at a time. And this was only the beginning. 3 months into my new role as Director of Strategic Partnerships, I discovered that changing corporate culture was far more complex than I had anticipated. While Morrison Financial's leadership had embraced the new partnership model, implementing it across an organization of 400 employees required constant vigilance and course correction. The first major test came when we were approached by Riverside Electronics, a family-owned company in Portland that manufactured high-end audio equipment. They were facing the same challenges that had plagued Pinnacle: outdated marketing, limited distribution, and intense competition from overseas manufacturers. Their founder, Janet Riverside, had built the company over 30 years, but her son Derek was pushing for a sale to pay off mounting debts. On paper, Riverside Electronics was exactly the type of company our new partnership model was designed to help. They had exceptional products, loyal customers, and deep expertise in their field. But when I flew to Portland to meet with the Riverside family, I discovered a situation far more complicated than financial projections could reveal. Derek Riverside was hostile from the moment I walked into their conference room. Unlike Sarah Pinnacle, who had been eager for alternatives to acquisition, Derek saw my presence as an obstacle to what he considered the inevitable sale of his mother's company. "Ms. Rodriguez, I appreciate Morrison Financial's interest in this partnership concept," Derek said, his tone barely civil. "But we need cash now, not consulting services and strategic guidance. Our suppliers are demanding payment, our bank is threatening to call our loans, and we have payroll obligations that can't wait for marketing campaigns to generate revenue." Janet Riverside sat quietly beside her son, but I could see the pain in her eyes as he spoke about selling the company she'd built from nothing. She reminded me of Robert Pinnacle, proud, determined, but worn down by circumstances beyond her control. "Derek, I understand the urgency of your financial situation," I replied, "but selling to traditional acquisition firms will only provide short-term relief for long-term problems. Once your company is absorbed into a larger corporation, you'll lose control over everything your mother built. At least the employees will keep their jobs," Derek shot back. "Will they?" I pulled out my tablet and showed him data from Morrison Financial's previous acquisitions. Companies acquired through traditional models typically reduce their workforce by 35 to 60% within the first year. Your 150 employees would likely become 60 to 90 employees, and those remaining would be working for a corporation that sees them as cost centers, not valued contributors. Janet Riverside spoke for the first time. "Elena, Derek is right about our immediate cash flow problems. Even if your partnership model could help us long-term, we need working capital to survive the next 3 months." This was the challenge I'd been dreading. Partnership models worked beautifully for companies that needed strategic guidance and market expansion, but they were harder to implement when businesses faced imminent financial collapse. I needed to prove that Morrison Financial's new approach could address immediate crises as well as long-term growth. Mrs. Riverside, what if Morrison Financial provided emergency bridge financing to stabilize your cash flow while we implemented the strategic changes needed for sustainable growth? We're not talking about acquisition debt that burdens your company. We're talking about partnership investment that positions you for independence. Derek's hostility softened slightly. What kind of terms are we discussing? Equity partnership instead of debt financing. Morrison Financial would invest capital in exchange for a minority stake in your company, but you and your mother retain controlling interest. We provide immediate cash flow relief and ongoing strategic support, but Riverside Electronics remains your company. Over the next 6 hours, we hammered out the framework for what would become Morrison Financial's most complex partnership agreement. The financial terms were straightforward. We would inject enough capital to stabilize their operations while taking a 30% equity stake. But the operational changes required careful negotiation. Janet Riverside was protective of her company's culture and worried that outside investment would change the family atmosphere she'd cultivated over 3 decades. Derek was focused on modernizing operations and eliminating what he saw as inefficiencies inherited from his mother's management style. I found myself mediating between 2 generations of leadership while designing strategies that honored both perspectives. The breakthrough came when I suggested a phased implementation approach. Janet would remain CEO for 2 years while Derek transitioned into the role of Chief Operating Officer. During this period, we would modernize their technology, marketing, and distribution systems while preserving the company culture that made Riverside Electronics special. After 2 years, Derek would assume the CEO role, with Janet moving to chairman of the board. This gives you time to learn what your mother built before you start changing it, I told Derek. And it gives your mother time to ensure her legacy is preserved during the transition. The Riverside Electronics partnership became our most challenging and ultimately most successful case study. Within 6 months, we had modernized their entire product line, launched an e-commerce platform that tripled their direct sales, and established partnerships with high-end retailers across the country. More importantly, we had preserved the family dynamics that made the company special while positioning it for sustained growth. But success brought unexpected complications. As Morrison Financial's partnership model gained recognition in the business press, we started receiving attention from companies that saw our approach as a way to access capital without losing control. The problem was that not every struggling business was suitable for partnership. Some genuinely needed to be acquired or liquidated, and others had fundamental problems that no amount of strategic guidance could solve. One particularly difficult case involved Metroplex Manufacturing, a Texas-based company that produced industrial equipment. On paper, they looked like an ideal partnership candidate: established brand, experienced workforce, solid product line. But when I spent a week at their facility, I discovered a toxic corporate culture that had driven away their best employees and alienated their customer base. The company's CEO, Bradley Morse, was an old-school manager who ruled through intimidation and treated workers as expendable resources. He had heard about Morrison Financial's partnership model and assumed it was a way to get investment capital without changing his management approach. "Ms. Rodriguez, I don't need consultants telling me how to run my business," Morse said during our first meeting. "I've been running Metroplex for 15 years, and we've been profitable every quarter. What I need is capital to expand operations and capture more market share." I spent the next few days talking to employees, suppliers, and customers, painting a picture that contradicted Morse's claims of success. Employee turnover was over 40% annually, customer complaints were increasing, and their profit margins were declining despite revenue growth. The company was successful in spite of Morse's leadership, not because of it. When I presented my findings to Morrison Financial's executive team, Marcus Chen faced a difficult decision. Metroplex represented significant revenue potential, but partnering with them would compromise everything we claimed to believe about dignified treatment of workers. "Elena, what do you recommend?" Chen asked during our strategy meeting. "I recommend we decline the partnership," I said firmly. Metroplex's problems aren't financial or strategic, they're cultural. Bradley Morse treats his employees like disposable assets, and that's not compatible with our values. We can't claim to support worker dignity while partnering with companies that exploit their workforce. "But they're profitable," pointed out Jennifer Walsh, our Chief Financial Officer. "From a purely financial perspective, this partnership could generate significant returns." "Jennifer, profitability built on worker exploitation isn't sustainable," I replied. "Eventually, their best employees will leave, their customers will find alternatives, and their reputation will catch up with their practices. We'd be partnering with a company in decline, not growth." Chen nodded slowly. "Elena's right. If we compromise our principles for short-term profit, we become exactly what we used to be: Decline the partnership. The decision to reject Metroplex Manufacturing established an important precedent for our partnership program. We weren't just providing capital and expertise. We were investing in companies that shared our values about treating people with dignity and respect. This made our due diligence process more complex, but it also ensured that our partnerships were built on solid ethical foundations. Meanwhile, our existing partnerships were generating results that exceeded everyone's expectations. Pinnacle Manufacturing had become a case study taught in business schools, with Robert Pinnacle frequently speaking at conferences about the benefits of partnership over acquisition. Riverside Electronics had expanded into international markets and was considering opening a second manufacturing facility. But the most meaningful success story came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, the cleaning supervisor who had worked at Morrison Financial for 15 years, approached me with a business proposal that would test everything I'd learned about recognizing potential in unlikely places. "Elena, I have an idea I'd like you to consider," Maria said during one of our regular coffee meetings. "My daughter Carmen graduated from business school last year, and she's been helping me think about starting a commercial cleaning company." I leaned forward with interest. "Tell me more about your idea." "Most cleaning companies treat their workers terribly. Minimum wage, no benefits, no respect. But what if there was a cleaning company that operated differently? What if we provided living wages, health insurance, education benefits, and treated our employees like the skilled professionals they are?" Maria's proposal was brilliant in its simplicity. She had 15 years of experience in commercial cleaning, intimate knowledge of what clients needed, and deep understanding of how to treat workers with dignity. Her daughter Carmen brought business training and fresh perspectives on marketing and operations. We've identified 12 potential clients who would pay premium rates for cleaning services that come with reliability guarantees and professionally trained staff, Maria continued. "The problem is startup capital. We need equipment, insurance, and working capital to cover payroll for the first 6 months." I realized I was looking at exactly the type of opportunity Morrison Financial's partnership model was designed to support. Maria and Carmen had identified a market need, developed a solution that honored worker dignity, and created a business plan that could generate sustainable profits. The only thing they lacked was capital. "Maria, would you be interested in presenting this proposal to Morrison Financial's partnership committee?" Her eyes widened. "You think they'd consider partnering with a cleaning company?" "I think they'd be crazy not to consider partnering with a company led by someone who understands both the industry and the importance of treating workers fairly." 3 weeks later, Maria and Carmen Santos presented their business plan to Morrison Financial's executive team. Carmen handled the financial projections and market analysis while Maria spoke about operational strategies and employee relations. It was one of the most compelling presentations I'd ever witnessed. "Dignified Cleaning Services isn't just another cleaning company," Maria explained to the assembled executives. "We're proving that businesses can be profitable while treating workers with respect. Our employees will earn living wages, receive health benefits, and have opportunities for advancement. Happy employees provide better service, which creates loyal customers and sustainable profits." Marcus Chen was intrigued but cautious. "Maria, the cleaning industry is notoriously competitive with thin profit margins. How do you plan to charge premium rates while paying above-market wages?" Carmen answered confidently. "Mr. Chen, clients are willing to pay more for reliability, quality, and accountability. Most cleaning companies suffer from high turnover and inconsistent service because they treat workers poorly. By investing in our employees, we can guarantee consistency and quality that justifies premium pricing." The partnership was approved unanimously, making Dignified Cleaning Services the smallest company in Morrison Financial's portfolio and potentially the most important. If a cleaning company could prove that worker dignity and business success were compatible, it would validate everything we claim to believe about partnership models. 6 months later, Dignified Cleaning Services was operating beyond their most optimistic projections. They had contracted with 18 commercial clients, employed 24 workers at wages 40% above industry average, and maintained a 98% customer satisfaction rating. More importantly, they had created a workplace culture that treated cleaning as skilled professional work, deserving of respect and fair compensation. The success of Dignified Cleaning Services created a ripple effect throughout Morrison Financial's partnership portfolio. Other partner companies began examining their own employment practices, asking whether they were truly honoring worker dignity or simply paying lip service to the concept. We started conducting annual assessments that evaluated partners not just on financial performance, but on employee satisfaction, workplace safety, and community impact. But the most profound change was happening within Morrison Financial itself. Employees who had once viewed the company as a typical acquisition firm now saw themselves as part of something larger, a movement to prove that business could be a force for good in the world. The cynicism that had characterized corporate culture was replaced by genuine pride in the work we were doing. This transformation became evident during our first annual partnership conference, where leaders from all our partner companies gathered to share experiences and best practices. The energy in the room was unlike anything I'd experienced in corporate settings. These weren't competitors protecting trade secrets. They were collaborators working toward common goals. Robert Pinnacle shared insights about maintaining family culture during rapid growth. Janet and Derek Riverside discussed successful generational transitions in family businesses. Maria Santos presented data showing how worker dignity translated directly into customer satisfaction and profitability. But the most moving moment came when Marcus Chen addressed the assembled group. 2 years ago, Morrison Financial was a traditional acquisition firm focused on maximizing returns through operational efficiency, Chen said. We were successful by conventional measures, but we were also part of a system that treated companies and workers as commodities to be optimized, rather than communities to be supported. He paused, looking around the room at faces representing hundreds of employees whose lives had been improved through partnership rather than acquisition. Elena Rodriguez taught us that there's a different way to do business, one that honors human dignity while generating sustainable profits. She showed us that the most valuable assets in any company aren't financial statements or equipment inventories. They're the people who show up every day to build something meaningful together. Chen's words resonated deeply with everyone in the room, but they had special meaning for me. The woman who had once been invisible, cleaning offices while powerful people made decisions that affected thousands of lives, had somehow become the architect of a movement that was changing how those decisions were made. As the conference concluded and participants began planning their journeys home, I found myself thinking about the unexpected path that had brought me to this moment. A failed business had led to a cleaning job, which had led to corporate espionage, which had led to an unlikely partnership with the very people I'd been working against. But the real transformation hadn't been in boardrooms or conference centers. It had been in the recognition that every person, regardless of their position or title, had something valuable to contribute to the world. The key was creating systems that allowed those contributions to be seen, valued, and rewarded fairly. That evening, as I prepared for my flight back to Chicago, I received a text message from Frank Patterson, the security guard who had greeted me every night during my cleaning days. His granddaughter Emma had started first grade and wanted to thank the nice lady from Grandpa's work who had helped make his job better. I smiled as I read the message, remembering the countless nights Frank had welcomed me with kindness, despite my invisibility to most of the building's occupants. His simple humanity had been a bright spot during the darkest period of my life, and now his granddaughter was benefiting from changes that began with someone finally seeing and valuing his worth. The ripple effects of treating people with dignity extended far beyond corporate balance sheets or employee satisfaction surveys. They reached into families, communities, and futures that we might never see, but were helping to shape through every decision we made about how business should be conducted. YouTube script. Part 6. The Ultimate Test. 2 years into Morrison Financial's partnership revolution, we faced our greatest challenge yet. The call came on a gray October morning from Victoria Chen, Marcus's younger sister and CEO of Titan Industries, one of the largest manufacturing conglomerates on the West Coast. "Elena, I need to meet with you and Marcus immediately," Victoria said, her voice tight with urgency. "We have a situation that could destroy everything you've built." Within 6 hours, I was sitting in Morrison Financial's conference room, across from Victoria Chen, a woman whose reputation for ruthless efficiency had earned her the nickname the Iron Lady of Silicon Valley. She controlled a manufacturing empire worth over $2 billion, and her expression suggested she wasn't here for a friendly family visit. "Marcus, your little experiment in feel-good capitalism is about to face reality," Victoria began without preamble. "Sterling Automotive is going under, and when they collapse, they're taking half your partner companies with them. Sterling Automotive was one of the largest suppliers to our manufacturing partners. If they failed, the ripple effects would devastate companies like Pinnacle Manufacturing and Riverside Electronics, potentially destroying everything we'd worked to build." "Victoria, what exactly are you talking about?" Marcus asked, though his face had already gone pale. "Sterling's CEO, David Sterling, has been cooking the books for 18 months. They're facing bankruptcy, federal investigation, and complete operational shutdown within 60 days. Your precious partners are going to lose their primary supplier, and there's no alternative manufacturer with the capacity to replace them. I felt the room spin as the implications hit me. Sterling Automotive supplied critical components to 8 of our 12 partner companies. Without those components, production would halt, orders would go unfilled, and the financial domino effect would be catastrophic. How do you know this? I asked. Victoria smiled coldly. Because Titan Industries has been monitoring Sterling's financial health for months. We've been positioning ourselves to acquire their assets when they collapse. The question is whether you want to salvage something from this disaster or watch your partnership model burn to the ground. Marcus leaned forward. What are you proposing? Titan Industries acquires Sterling Automotive's manufacturing capabilities and becomes the exclusive supplier to your partner companies. Your partners get continuity of supply, Titan gets guaranteed customers, and everyone survives the transition. It sounded reasonable on the surface, but I knew Victoria Chen's reputation. She didn't make deals that benefited anyone but herself. What's the catch? I asked. The catch is that your partner companies will be dependent on Titan for their critical components. That gives us significant leverage over their operations, pricing, and strategic decisions. Your precious independence becomes an illusion. Victoria's proposal was exactly the type of predatory arrangement we'd been working to eliminate. She would use Sterling's collapse to gain control over our partners without technically acquiring them. It was corporate manipulation disguised as rescue. Victoria, that's not partnership. That's economic hostage-taking, Marcus said. It's business reality, Marcus. Your idealistic approach works fine when everyone is healthy and profitable. But when a crisis hits, you need practical solutions, not feel-good philosophy. I studied Victoria's face, recognizing the same calculating expression I'd once seen in Marcus before his transformation. She viewed our partner companies as assets to be controlled, not communities to be supported. Mrs. Chen, what if there was a third option? I said. What if we found a way to save Sterling Automotive instead of letting it collapse? Victoria laughed harshly. Elena, Sterling is 18 months into a fraud scandal with federal investigators breathing down their necks. They're beyond saving. Are they? Or are they beyond saving using traditional acquisition methods? Marcus caught my meaning immediately. Elena, are you suggesting we try to partner Sterling? I'm suggesting we investigate whether Sterling's problems are criminal leadership or systemic business failure. If it's the former, maybe we can separate the company from the people who destroyed it. Victoria's expression shifted from amusement to concern. She'd expected us to accept her proposal or watch helplessly as our partners suffered. She hadn't anticipated that we might try to compete with her rescue plan. You're talking about a company facing federal fraud charges, Victoria said. No legitimate financial institution will touch them. Morrison Financial isn't a traditional institution anymore, I replied. We specialize in situations other people consider impossible. The next 72 hours were the most intense of my professional life. While Victoria Chen mobilized Titan Industries to acquire Sterling's assets, I led a team of investigators, accountants, and lawyers to determine whether Sterling Automotive could be saved. What we discovered was both worse and better than expected. David Sterling had indeed been manipulating financial reports, but the underlying business was fundamentally sound. Sterling Automotive produced high-quality components that were essential to American manufacturing, and their workforce included some of the most skilled technicians in the industry. The fraud wasn't a reflection of operational failure. It was the desperate act of a CEO trying to hide cash flow problems caused by his own mismanagement. Sterling had taken on too much debt too quickly, pursuing growth that outpaced their ability to maintain quality control and customer service. The irony is that Sterling could have been profitable if David Sterling hadn't tried to game the system, explained Amanda Foster, the forensic accountant we'd hired to analyze their books. Their core business generates solid margins, but the debt service from his expansion schemes consumed all their profits. I realized we were looking at a variation of every company we'd partnered with. Good business destroyed by bad leadership. The difference was that Sterling's problems had escalated to criminal behavior, making the situation far more complex than anything we'd handled before. But complexity also created opportunity. If we could separate Sterling Automotive from David Sterling's criminal actions, we might be able to save both the company and our partner network. The breakthrough came when I suggested an unprecedented approach. A partnership with Sterling's employees rather than Sterling's ownership. Instead of acquiring the company or its assets, Morrison Financial would partner with the workers to create a new company using Sterling's equipment, facilities, and customer relationships. It's essentially a worker buyout funded through our partnership model, I explained to Marcus during an emergency strategy session. The employees form a new company, Morrison Financial provides capital and strategic guidance, and we rebuild Sterling from the ground up with the same workforce but completely new leadership. Marcus was intrigued but cautious. Elena, we're talking about 800 employees, complex federal investigations, and millions of dollars in equipment and inventory. This is far beyond anything we've attempted. It's also our only chance to prove that partnership models can handle genuine crises, I replied. If we can turn Sterling Automotive around, we demonstrate that worker dignity and business success aren't just compatible during good times, they're essential during bad times. The legal and financial obstacles were staggering. Federal investigators had frozen Sterling's assets pending completion of their fraud investigation. Customers were canceling orders and demanding refunds. Suppliers were demanding immediate payment for outstanding invoices. The company was hemorrhaging money and credibility with each passing day. But the workers were the key to everything. Sterling's employees possessed decades of specialized knowledge that couldn't be replaced or replicated. They understood the manufacturing processes, customer requirements, and quality standards that made Sterling's products valuable. Without their cooperation, any rescue attempt would fail. I spent 2 weeks at Sterling's facility in Michigan, meeting with workers, supervisors, and union representatives to gauge their interest in an employee ownership transition. The conversations were unlike anything I'd experienced in corporate consulting. Ms. Rodriguez, we've been watching this company fall apart for months, said Tom Bradley, a machinist who'd worked at Sterling for 23 years. David Sterling treated us like we were stupid, like we couldn't see what was happening to our own workplace. But we knew things were bad long before the FBI showed up. Betty Walsh, Sterling's senior quality control supervisor, was more direct. The question isn't whether we want to save our jobs. It's whether you're serious about letting us actually run this company the right way. We know how to make these products better than anyone, but Sterling never listened to our ideas. The workers' insights were revelatory. They had suggestions for improving efficiency, reducing waste, and enhancing quality that had been ignored by Sterling's management for years. They understood their customers' needs better than the sales team, and had ideas for new products that could expand market opportunities. But they were also skeptical of outside investors making promises about worker ownership and democratic management. They'd seen too many companies sold to buyers who talked about valuing employees while planning to eliminate jobs. How do we know Morrison Financial won't just use us to get the company profitable and then sell us to someone like Titan Industries? Asked Miguel Santos, a shift supervisor whose concerns reflected widespread worker anxiety. I understood their skepticism because I'd lived their experience. 18 months earlier, I'd been an invisible worker whose ideas and insights were ignored by the executives whose offices I cleaned. The distance between worker and decision-maker wasn't just organizational, it was cultural. Miguel, you don't have to trust my promises, I said. You can help write the partnership agreement. Worker ownership means workers control the major decisions about the company's future. Morrison Financial provides capital and expertise, but you and your colleagues retain voting control over operations, employment, and strategic direction. The concept of genuine worker democracy was so foreign to traditional corporate structure that it took weeks to design legal frameworks that protected everyone's interests. But gradually, we developed a model that gave Sterling's employees unprecedented control over their workplace, while providing Morrison Financial with reasonable returns on investment. The new company would be called Sterling Worker Cooperative, with employees holding 60% ownership and Morrison Financial holding 40%. Major decisions would require approval from worker-elected representatives, and profits would be shared based on both investment contribution and labor participation. Victoria Chen was furious when she learned about our worker cooperative proposal. She'd been positioning Titan Industries to acquire Sterling's assets at bankruptcy prices, and our rescue plan threatened to eliminate her opportunity for predatory acquisition. Marcus, this worker ownership scheme is financial suicide, Victoria told him during a heated phone conversation I overheard. You're giving control of a multi-million-dollar company to factory workers who don't understand business strategy or market dynamics. Victoria, those factory workers understand their business better than most executives understand theirs, Marcus replied. They've been telling David Sterling how to improve operations for years, but he was too arrogant to listen. And when their idealistic experiment fails, your partner companies will still need suppliers. Titan Industries will be ready to provide those components at market rates. Victoria's threat was clear. She would wait for our worker cooperative to fail, then swoop in to control our entire partner network through supplier relationships. It was a long-term strategy to destroy our partnership model while appearing to support free market competition. But the Sterling workers were determined to prove that employee ownership could succeed where traditional management had failed. The transition from Sterling Automotive to Sterling Worker Cooperative took 6 months of legal negotiations, federal oversight, and operational restructuring. The results exceeded everyone's expectations, except those of the workers themselves. Within 90 days of the transition, production efficiency increased by 23%, quality defects decreased by 41%, and customer satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. The workers who had been dismissed as just factory employees implemented innovations that saved hundreds of thousands of dollars while improving product quality. The difference is that we actually care about this company succeeding, explained Tom Bradley during a facility tour for Morrison Financial's board of directors. When it was David Sterling's company, we just did our jobs and collected paychecks. Now it's our company, so every improvement benefits us directly. Betty Walsh showed off the new quality control systems that workers had designed and implemented. We've been telling management for years how to prevent these defects, but they never wanted to spend money on our suggestions. Now that we make the decisions, we can invest in the equipment and training that actually solve problems. The Sterling Worker Cooperative became a case study in employee ownership that attracted attention from business schools, labor organizations, and policymakers. But more importantly, it secured the supply chain that kept our partner companies operational and growing. Pinnacle Manufacturing, Riverside Electronics, and our other partners not only survived Sterling's crisis, they thrived because their supplier was now managed by people who understood manufacturing from the ground up. The cooperative's worker owners prioritized quality and reliability over short-term profits, creating stronger relationships with their customers. Victoria Chen's prediction of worker incompetence proved spectacularly wrong. The Sterling Worker Cooperative achieved profitability 6 months ahead of projections, paid down debt faster than anticipated, and began developing new products that expanded their market opportunities. But Victoria wasn't finished trying to undermine our partnership model. If she couldn't control our supply chain through acquisition, she would attack our partnerships directly by offering better terms to our most successful companies. The assault began with a formal acquisition offer to Robert Pinnacle that was 3 times Morrison Financial's original valuation of his company. Titan Industries offered $135 million for Pinnacle Manufacturing, with guarantees that all employees would keep their jobs and Robert would remain as a consultant for 5 years. "Elena, I have to seriously consider this offer," Robert told me during an emergency meeting at Pinnacle's headquarters. "That money would secure my family's future and provide college funds for all my grandchildren. It's hard to turn down financial security for idealistic principles." Sarah Pinnacle was torn between loyalty to our partnership and practical concerns about her father's retirement planning. "Elena, we appreciate everything Morrison Financial has done for us, but this offer represents generational wealth for our family. Can you honestly advise us to reject it?" Victoria's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. She wasn't trying to destroy our partnerships through hostile takeovers. She was making offers so attractive that our partners would voluntarily abandon the cooperative model for immediate financial gain. As I sat in Pinnacle's conference room, surrounded by the family I'd worked so hard to protect, I realized that Victoria Chen had found the ultimate test of our partnership philosophy. Could worker dignity and cooperative values compete with raw financial temptation? The answer would determine not just Pinnacle's future, but the survival of everything we'd built together. YouTube script. Part 7, The Final Choice. The silence in Pinnacle Manufacturing's conference room stretched on as Robert Pinnacle wrestled with the most difficult decision of his life. Victoria Chen's $135 million offer sat on the table between us like a loaded weapon, threatening to destroy everything we'd built together. "Robert," I said finally, "before you make this decision, I want you to understand what accepting Victoria's offer really means." I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the conference room projector. For the next hour, I presented everything I'd learned about Victoria Chen's business practices, Titan Industries' track record with acquisitions, and the real cost of selling to predatory corporations. "DataPoint Kitchen Solutions was a family company like yours," I explained, showing before and after photos of their operation. "Victoria acquired them 2 years ago with similar promises about preserving jobs and honoring company culture. Within 18 months, she had moved production to Mexico, eliminated 70% of the workforce, and destroyed the product quality that made DataPoint special." Sarah Pinnacle leaned forward, studying the data. But Victoria guaranteed that our employees would keep their jobs. Sarah, Victoria Chen is brilliant at structuring acquisitions that technically fulfill her promises while completely subverting their intent. Your employees might keep their jobs initially, but they'll be working for a company that views them as cost centers to be optimized rather than valued contributors to be supported. I clicked to the next slide showing Titan Industries' internal documents that our legal team had obtained through discovery in a previous lawsuit. This is Victoria's standard playbook. Year 1. Maintain operations while conducting, quote, efficiency assessments. Year 2. Implement optimization strategies that eliminate, quote, redundant positions. Year 3. Relocate production to lower-cost facilities. By year 4, the original company exists, only as a brand name, slapped on products made by workers earning a fraction of what your current employees make. Robert Pinnacle's face hardened as he absorbed the implications. So Victoria's offer isn't really about acquiring Pinnacle Manufacturing. It's about eliminating a competitor while destroying our workforce. Exactly. And once she controls Pinnacle, she has leverage over every other company in our partnership network. She can manipulate supply chains, undercut pricing, and force our other partners to accept similar acquisition offers. The room fell quiet again as the Pinnacle family contemplated the true stakes of their decision. This wasn't just about their company's future. It was about the survival of an entire approach to business that prioritized human dignity over profit maximization. But I could see the conflict in Robert's eyes. $135 million represented security for his children and grandchildren that he'd never imagined possible. Turning down that offer to preserve abstract principles about worker dignity felt almost irresponsible. Elena, Robert said slowly, I appreciate everything you've shown us about Victoria's methods. But at the end of the day, I have to think about my family's financial security. This offer would set up my children and grandchildren for life. Robert, what if I told you there was a way to achieve that financial security without betraying your employees or destroying your company's legacy? Sarah looked skeptical. Elena, you're not suggesting Morrison Financial can match Victoria's offer. That's far beyond your partnership model's scope. You're right. Morrison Financial can't match Victoria's offer. But what if Pinnacle Manufacturing could generate that much value for your family while remaining independent? I had been developing this idea during the sleepless nights since Victoria's offer arrived, but I'd never imagined I would need to present it under such pressure. I'm proposing that Pinnacle Manufacturing become the flagship of a new kind of business structure, a cooperative consortium of manufacturing companies that share resources, expertise, and market access while maintaining their independence. I pulled up a presentation I'd prepared showing how Sterling Worker Cooperative, Riverside Electronics, and our other partners could form an integrated network of companies that competed collectively against corporate giants like Titan Industries. Instead of selling to Victoria, Pinnacle becomes the anchor of a manufacturing cooperative that includes all our partner companies. You share technology, coordinate production, cross-train employees, and present unified bargaining power to suppliers and customers. Robert studied the projections with growing interest. You're talking about creating our own version of what Victoria offers, the benefits of scale without the loss of control. Exactly. And because each company maintains ownership and decision-making authority, you preserve the family culture and worker dignity that makes Pinnacle special, while gaining the market power to compete with multinational corporations. Sarah was skeptical but intrigued. Elena, this sounds theoretically interesting, but how does it address my father's need for financial security? The cooperative model doesn't generate $135 million in immediate cash. Sarah, what if your father's financial security came from ongoing dividends and equity appreciation rather than a one-time sale? Based on our projections, the cooperative model could generate returns that exceed Victoria's offer over a 10-year period, while preserving Pinnacle for future generations. I showed them detailed financial models that our team had developed, projecting how the cooperative structure could increase each company's valuation through shared efficiencies and market expansion. The key is that you're not just selling a company, you're building a legacy that generates wealth for your family while providing security for your employees and strengthening American manufacturing. Robert was quiet for a long moment, then looked at his daughter. Sarah, what do you think? Dad, I think Elena is offering us something Victoria never could. A way to build wealth while honoring everything you've taught me about treating people with dignity and respect. Robert extended his hand across the conference table. Elena, let's build this cooperative. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of legal negotiations, operational coordination, and strategic planning as we constructed the American Manufacturing Cooperative, a network of 12 companies representing over 2,000 employees and $400 million in combined annual revenue. The cooperative structure was unlike anything that existed in American business. Each company maintained its independence and ownership structure, while participating in shared services that reduced costs and expanded capabilities. They coordinated purchasing to negotiate better supplier terms, shared transportation networks to reduce logistics costs, and cross-trained employees to provide backup capacity during peak demand periods. But the most innovative aspect was the profit-sharing arrangement. Companies contributed a percentage of their profits to a shared investment fund that provided capital for expansion, research and development, and emergency support. This created a safety net that protected individual companies during temporary difficulties, while generating returns that exceeded what any single company could achieve independently. Victoria Chen watched our cooperative formation with growing alarm. She had expected the Pinnacle acquisition to trigger a cascade of similar deals that would destroy our partnership network. Instead, she was facing a unified competitor that could match Titan Industries' capabilities while maintaining the flexibility and innovation that large corporations often lost. Her response was swift and ruthless. Victoria began a price war designed to force our cooperative members into financial distress, hoping to split the alliance by making survival dependent on accepting her acquisition offers. "Elena, Victoria is selling components below cost to our biggest customers," reported Janet Riverside during an emergency cooperative meeting. "She's trying to force us to choose between matching her prices and maintaining our profit margins." The attack was sophisticated and well-funded. Victoria was using Titan Industries' massive resources to subsidize below-cost pricing in markets where our cooperative members competed, essentially paying customers to abandon our companies in favor of her suppliers. "She's playing a long-term game," I explained to the cooperative's board of directors. "Victoria can sustain losses for months or even years, because she's betting that we'll fracture under financial pressure. Once she eliminates our competition, she'll raise prices and recoup her investment through monopoly pricing." But Victoria had underestimated both the financial resources and the solidarity of our cooperative structure. The shared investment fund we'd established provided exactly the kind of support needed to weather her price war, while our integrated operations allowed us to find efficiencies that offset reduced profit margins. More importantly, our cooperative members understood that they were fighting for something larger than individual company survival. They were proving that worker dignity and business success weren't just compatible. They were mutually reinforcing when businesses worked together instead of against each other. The breakthrough came when Sterling Worker Cooperative developed a manufacturing innovation that reduced production costs by 15% while improving product quality. Under traditional competitive models, Sterling would have hoarded this innovation to maximize their own advantage. But under the cooperative structure, they shared the technology with all member companies, creating competitive advantages that Victoria couldn't match. "This is what cooperation looks like in practice," Tom Bradley explained during a presentation to potential new cooperative members. "When we succeed, everyone succeeds. When someone develops an improvement, we all benefit. We're not just competing against Titan Industries. We're proving there's a better way to do business." The cooperative's success attracted attention from companies across the country that wanted to join a business network that prioritized worker dignity alongside financial returns. Within 18 months, the American Manufacturing Cooperative had grown to include 27 companies in 16 states, representing over 5,000 employees and nearly $800 million in combined revenue. But success also brought new challenges. Victoria Chen realized that direct competition wasn't going to destroy our cooperative, so she shifted tactics to political and regulatory warfare. She began lobbying for changes in labor laws, tax policies, and trade regulations that would disadvantage worker-owned businesses while benefiting large corporations. Victoria is trying to use government policy to accomplish what she couldn't achieve through market competition, Marcus Chen warned during one of our strategy meetings. She's pushing for legislation that would eliminate tax advantages for worker cooperatives and impose regulatory burdens that favor large corporations. The political battle required resources and expertise that our manufacturing cooperative didn't possess. But we found unexpected allies in other cooperative businesses, labor organizations, and progressive policy groups that shared our vision of democratic economic structures. I found myself testifying before congressional committees, speaking at policy conferences, and building coalitions with groups I'd never imagined working with. The cleaning lady, who had once been invisible, was now advocating for economic democracy on national television. The American Manufacturing Cooperative proves that worker ownership isn't just an idealistic theory. It's a practical policy that strengthens communities, preserves manufacturing jobs, and generates sustainable economic growth. I told the House Committee on Small Business during a hearing on cooperative development. The committee's ranking member, Congresswoman Patricia Wells, was skeptical. Ms. Rodriguez, critics argue that worker cooperatives are inefficient compared to traditional corporate structures. How do you respond to concerns that employee ownership reduces competitiveness? Congresswoman Wells, our cooperatives' productivity metrics exceed industry averages in every category we measure. Worker owners are more invested in quality, innovation, and customer satisfaction because they directly benefit from the company's success. The idea that worker ownership reduces efficiency is contradicted by our actual performance data. The hearing generated significant media attention, much of it focused on the unlikely story of a night cleaner who would become a spokesperson for economic democracy. But the real impact came from the testimony of cooperative members who spoke about how worker ownership had transformed their lives and communities. Maria Santos, whose dignified cleaning services had grown to employ over 100 worker owners, explained how cooperative ownership had enabled her to provide health care, education benefits, and profit sharing to employees who had never experienced economic security. Before starting our cooperative, I cleaned offices for 15 years while watching my children struggle to afford college, Maria testified. Now my daughter Carmen is a business owner. My son Miguel is studying engineering with full scholarship support from our cooperative's education fund, and I'm helping other families achieve the same opportunities. Robert Pinnacle described how the cooperative structure had allowed his company to preserve family ownership while providing financial security that exceeded what any acquisition could have offered. 3 years ago, I was facing a choice between selling my life's work to predatory investors or watching it collapse under financial pressure, Robert explained. The cooperative model gave me a third option: building something larger than my individual company while preserving everything that made it special. The congressional hearing marked a turning point in public perception of worker cooperatives. What had begun as an experimental rescue of struggling companies had evolved into a movement for economic democracy that attracted support from unexpected quarters. Conservative politicians who typically opposed worker organizing found themselves supporting cooperative development because it promoted small business ownership and reduced dependence on government assistance. Progressive advocates embraced cooperatives as practical solutions to income inequality and corporate concentration. Victoria Chen's lobbying campaign backfired spectacularly when the congressional hearings revealed that Titan Industries had been using overseas tax shelters to avoid paying their fair share, while attacking worker-owned businesses that generated local employment and community investment. Victoria thought she could use political influence to destroy what she couldn't defeat through market competition, Marcus reflected during the cooperative's annual meeting. Instead, she gave us a platform to demonstrate that democratic business models create value for everyone except predatory investors. The legislative outcome exceeded our most optimistic projections. Congress passed the Worker Cooperative Development Act, providing tax incentives, technical assistance, and loan guarantees for employee-owned businesses. More importantly, the legislation included provisions that prevented large corporations from using predatory pricing to eliminate cooperative competitors. But the real victory wasn't political, it was personal. Standing on the stage at our annual cooperative meeting, looking out at hundreds of worker owners whose lives had been transformed through democratic business models, I thought about the journey that had brought us all to this moment. The woman who had once pushed a cleaning cart through corporate hallways, invisible to the executives making decisions that affected thousands of lives, was now helping to reshape how those decisions were made. But more importantly, the principles that had guided that transformation, dignity, respect, and genuine partnership, had proven stronger than the greed and manipulation that Victoria Chen represented. As the meeting concluded and worker owners began planning for another year of cooperative growth, I received a text message that brought the story full circle. Frank Patterson, the security guard who had greeted me every night during my cleaning days, was retiring after 20 years of service. The message included a photo of his granddaughter Emma, now in 3rd grade, holding a certificate of achievement from school. "Thank you for helping make Grandpa's work better," the message read. "Emma wants to start her own business someday, just like the nice lady from Grandpa's office." I smiled as I saved the photo, thinking about the ripple effects of treating people with dignity and respect. Emma would grow up in a world where worker cooperatives were normal, where employee ownership was encouraged, and where business success was measured not just by profit margins, but by human flourishing. The ultimate irony was that Victoria Chen had inadvertently accelerated the very movement she'd tried to destroy. Her attacks on our cooperative had generated publicity, political support, and moral clarity that established worker democracy as a viable alternative to corporate exploitation. 6 months later, I received an unexpected visitor in my office. Victoria Chen herself, looking older and more subdued than I remembered from our previous confrontations. "Elena, I came to congratulate you on your success," Victoria said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "You've accomplished something I didn't think was possible. You've made cooperation more profitable than competition." I studied her carefully, wondering what had prompted this surprise visit. "Victoria, I appreciate the acknowledgement, but I suspect you didn't come here just to congratulate me. You're right, I came to offer you a proposition." Victoria reached into her briefcase and pulled out a document that made my heart skip a beat. It was a formal proposal for Titan Industries to join the American Manufacturing Cooperative as a member company. "I'm serious, Elena. I want Titan Industries to become part of your cooperative model." I stared at the woman who had spent 2 years trying to destroy everything we'd built. "Victoria, this is the same company that used predatory pricing to attack our members and lobbied Congress to eliminate cooperative tax advantages. Why would we trust Titan Industries as a cooperative partner?" "Because I've learned something from watching your success," Victoria replied. "Competitive advantage isn't just about eliminating rivals. It's about creating value that benefits everyone involved. Your cooperative generates more wealth for its members than my traditional acquisitions generate for Titan's shareholders." Victoria's conversion seemed too convenient to be genuine, but her proposal raised interesting questions about whether our cooperative model could accommodate large corporations seeking to transition away from extractive business practices. "Victoria, joining our cooperative would require fundamental changes in how Titan Industries operates. Are you prepared to implement democratic decision-making, profit-sharing, and worker ownership across your entire organization?" "I'm prepared to pilot those changes in Titan's manufacturing divisions," Victoria answered. "If the cooperative model proves as effective for Titan as it has for your other members, we'll expand it throughout the company." The proposal sparked intense debate within the cooperative's leadership. Some members viewed Victoria's interest as validation of our model's success, while others worried about allowing a former predator into our collaborative network. "Elena, this could be the ultimate test of whether our cooperative principles can transform even the most ruthless corporations," suggested Robert Pinnacle during our board discussion. "If we can successfully integrate Titan Industries, we prove that no company is too large or too entrenched to embrace democratic business practices." But Maria Santos was skeptical. "Victoria spent 2 years trying to destroy us. How do we know this isn't another strategy to infiltrate and undermine our cooperation from within?" The decision required careful consideration of both the opportunities and risks involved in working with a former adversary. After months of negotiation and due diligence, the cooperative voted to accept Titan Industries as a probationary member, subject to strict oversight and performance requirements. Victoria's transformation of Titan Industries proved genuine and remarkably successful. Within 18 months, the divisions that implemented cooperative ownership models showed significant improvements in productivity, employee satisfaction, and profitability. The changes were so dramatic that Victoria voluntarily extended cooperative practices throughout her entire organization. "Elena, I owe you an apology," Victoria told me during Titan's first annual cooperative meeting. "I spent decades believing that business success required treating workers as disposable costs rather than valuable assets. Your cooperative model proved that worker dignity and business profitability aren't just compatible, they're mutually reinforcing." The integration of Titan Industries into the American Manufacturing Cooperative represented the ultimate vindication of everything we'd worked to prove. If a $2 billion corporation led by one of America's most ruthless executives could successfully transition to democratic business practices, then any company could make the same transformation. As I stood before the packed auditorium at our 5th annual cooperative meeting, looking out at representatives from over 200 member companies employing more than 50,000 worker owners, I reflected on the journey that had brought us all together. 5 years earlier, I had been a desperate woman pushing a cleaning cart through corporate hallways, invisible to the powerful people making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Tonight, I was addressing a movement that was reshaping American business around principles of dignity, respect, and genuine partnership. But the real heroes of this story weren't in the auditorium. They were in factories and offices across the country, proving every day that businesses could succeed while treating people with the respect they deserved. The woman they had once dismissed as just a cleaner had become something much more important, a catalyst for change that reminded everyone that true power came not from controlling others, but from empowering them to reach their full potential. And this was only the beginning of what was possible when businesses chose cooperation over exploitation, partnership over predation, and human dignity over profit maximization. The cleaning lady had become a business partner, and in doing so had helped thousands of others discover their own potential for transformation. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.